Go ahead and start this session. I'd like to first of all thank the Astrolabs community to give us this opportunity to share what we're really passionate about, which is customer experience. And I'd like to thank all of you for joining in today, taking your time out to come and listen to this talk. What I see right now, by the way, is that there are quite a few people who have come, at and before time. So that suggests to me that there's a lot of people who are interested in customer experience, interested to know what it is. And some of you might be thinking, what is all this crap? What's the hullabaloo about? So that's kind of what we named this presentation and talk. Customer experience, what's all the hullabaloo about? So trying to basically introduce customer experience at a fundamental level, explaining what it is, and a little bit of myth busting perhaps in the process. And I'll ask you all to actually challenge yourselves in the process as we go along. So, a quick introduction. My name is Ghulam Hasnan Ali. I've founded a consulting firm over here by the name of Epic Consulting. Basically, by background, I'm actually a chartered accountant. I started my career in the finance area with Ernst& Young. I worked with them. Then I actually progressed to IT consulting and IT audit and IT governance. And I then spent time with Deloitte with their strategy and ops consulting team in the region. And eventually, Deloitte was actually restructuring, so I left and started my own gig. And During my time with Deloitte, I realized that business, especially when I was doing strategy and operations with them, I realized that businesses are basically there for customers. And so Epic Consulting is all about trying to get businesses a better understanding of who their customers are, what their customers' needs are, and digging into that space. So we work a lot in CX awareness. We do a lot of customer journey mapping. We have done voice of customer engagements as well. And having a math background, I still love customer analytics, and they do make a lot of sense at times. I'm probably the first person in the Middle East to get, not probably, I am in fact the first person in the Middle East and Pakistan to get the certified customer experience professional certification. This is a US based thing. This is about 5 years ago. So it was really lonely at that point. It was a lot of struggle trying to convince people about what customer experience is. And it was just a very lonesome time. Things have changed now in the region. Customer experience is being taken very seriously by some organizations, including the likes of MAF, as I've put down over here, Majid Al Futem. I'm actually working with them to promote customer experience and make their entire organization more aware about what customer experience is and what it's going to take to become customer obsessed for them, which is the path that they've decided to go down on. Um, and of course, we do a lot of talks on customer experience and design sprints. My team, in fact, my better half, who's I think in the call right now, she does a lot of design sprints. So we're combining journey mapping, customer experience with design sprints, and we're working on different variations of online journey mapping workshops for different target audiences. Let's get into it, though. I don't want to spend too much more time on that. I would request all of us to be open to lateral ideas. I think customer experience is an area which requires a certain degree of lateral thinking. So let's challenge our horizons and challenge me in the process. Write down your questions. I'll also challenge you occasionally during the course of this talk and ask you about your thoughts in certain areas. So unmute and speak up at that time. I'd be grateful. The first thing that I'd like to introduce us to is, this paradox that was actually found by a couple of Harvard professors in the late 1990s. So before the turn of the century, they actually did really seminal piece of research, and they came across a customer paradox. So at that time, by the way, in 1980s, in the mid 90s, the uh, the go-to score in the customer area and the customer relationship management was at its prime at that point. There were all these organizations who were trying to implement CRM, and customer satisfaction score was the customer measure to that organizations were working on and going to. And what these guys found is some really, really interesting, paradoxical kind of research. They found that for across a variety of industries, businesses saw that their dissatisfied customers and their satisfied customers were actually equally likely to defect. Now, let me repeat that. As strange as it sounds, their research, they found that customers who were satisfied, right, and customers who were dissatisfied were equally likely to defect. That came as a surprise and a shock to a lot of people in the business community, in the business discipline, in businesses at large, because they were all investing in customer satisfaction, right? So the next logical question was, if our satisfied customers are equally likely to defect as our dissatisfied customers, why on earth should we actually invest in customer satisfaction? Very legitimate question, very reasonable question, right? Even you might think, if I have a customer who's satisfied and I have a customer who's dissatisfied, and both of them are equally likely to defect, why the hell should I invest in customer satisfaction? Well, these guys actually, in the same research, in the same research, they found another little interesting piece of insight, which was that customers who are completely satisfied actually remain loyal. So this is basically, so the question would then be, how should we completely satisfy our customers? Because the name of the game in the customer space is that we want to build this almost kind of tribe like, I wouldn't say tribe, but this sacrificial loyalty from our customer base, who would keep coming to us, continue coming to us even in tough times, who would do business with us, and would in fact in today's age advocate us, right? So that's what we really want. The raison d'etre, the heart of customer experience, or what customer experience is really trying to get to, or what businesses really should be aiming to get to, is building this sacrificial kind of loyalty. So let me repeat this for you guys, because this is what was found at that point in the late 90s. Dissatisfied and satisfied customers were equally likely to defect. But fortunately, completely satisfied customers, right, remain loyal. So keep that in mind. Now the whole approach or emphasis of the business then became, how should we build this complete satisfaction? And that is what basically the business discipline of customer experience answers. But let me talk a little bit about how the economy was portrayed to advance to an experience economy. So I'm going to introduce the experience economy to all of you, which was put forward by Joseph Pine and James Gilmore. And they kind of put into context how historically industries and organizations, and in fact the entire economy, and then industries and organizations within them, progressed in terms of their economic, in terms of the economic value that they give. So initially, everything was about commodities, right? Commodities were extracted. So you had potatoes, sugar, whatever, it was extracted and sold to people. Not much value to make in that. And you can imagine, if everyone in an agrarian economy is selling potatoes, no one's really going to be able to make much of a margin, right? So there's going to be a lot of competition. Everyone's selling potatoes around you. Eventually, what you do is, okay, they decide, instead of potatoes, let me actually make some chips and sell them. So the manufacturing era came in. They packaged those potatoes into maybe chips or something, into a box of fries, and served them and sold them. That enabled these guys to add more value, to go a little higher in the price, right? Competitive, they started differentiating themselves. But you can imagine, again, a lot of people selling the same goods, the same manufacturing. Once you realize that others are also selling potatoes, they'll come in, start selling them. So you want to create more value. How do you do that? You go into the service economy. In the service economy, you're actually delivering services, and you're getting more value from that. But now things have changed even further. Now we're talking about the experience economy, where experiences are actually staged. And the way these guys explain it is really, really brilliant. It's really simple, nifty, and brilliant. So they start off with saying, okay, so someone is trying to make a cake, right? and they need sugar for it, they need flour for it, they need eggs for it. They go out and buy all these individual products and make the cake. But then people who were selling sugar, as I just described, they realized that everyone's selling sugar. It's the same price. How do we earn businesses? All businesses selling sugar. How should we make a profit? How can we differentiate ourselves? Well, they started making the packaged cake mix, right? With that, they were able to charge a little higher. But then that changed again. A lot of competition came in. People saw packaged cake mixes. It, businesses are making profit. More competition came in. How do you differentiate yourself? Well, they say, okay, why are people buying packaged cake mix? Because they want to prepare a cake. They want to make a cake, right? At the end of the day, that's what they're doing. So let's prepare the cake and actually sell cakes. So now there's a new form of business, but eventually that also gets saturated, right? The service economy. So what do? They think, okay, why are people preparing cakes? The question is, why are people preparing cakes? And they realize it's basically because people want to throw a party, right? So instead of actually preparing the cake, they say, okay, we can now really customize parties and let's throw the party. Your kid wants to go to a party, so they actually arrange the entire party and they throw the cake in there for free, right? Nothing is really for free, but it'll be so low priced compared to the price of the party that they're charging. But your intention and the reason why you were actually preparing that cake is fulfilled by having this party actually choreographed and staged by this organization. So let's take a look at what this experience economy and what this party kind of looks like in different contexts in different industries. I'm going to go through a couple of examples over here, right? Let's start off with coffee. Coffee bean manufacturer. Eventually, the in the experience economy, things change. There's not much margin in coffee beans, so they start packaging the coffee, right? After packaging it, they start serving coffee in the mom and pop shop down in the on the corner. And then eventually, in the experience economy, what organizations are doing is they're actually staging that entire experience, and the store is actually becoming a lifestyle space. So, as in the example of Starbucks over here, known example, very customer centric. Does anyone actually know what Starbucks mission is? Does anyone in the call actually? I'd like to ask this question real quick. Anyone can unmute and let me know what is Starbucks' actual mission? Do you think they're trying to sell coffee or they're trying to do something else over here? Anyone? Okay, well, that's okay. Starbucks is actually what they're trying to do is becoming the third place, right? Starbucks didn't decide. By the way, this mission is not very well known because they don't publicize it. But that's the raison d'etre, the reason for why Starbucks actually exists. They want to make Starbucks the third place. Now, imagine this for a moment. The first place is your home, right? The second place is your office. Starbucks is trying in to become in your mind the third place, which means if you step out of the office and you want to meet a friend, Starbucks. If you're walking through the mall and you want to just sit down for a while, Starbucks. If you want to work right outside your office environment, and but you don't want to go home yet, maybe Starbucks. It's becoming the third place. They didn't decide that they want to be the largest coffee producer or coffee seller of retail coffee in the world. That's not what they decided. They decided that they want to become a part of our lives by becoming the third place. And when they actually become the third place, the more and more they become the third place in our mind, right? Automatically by default, they know that once we sit there, once we spend time in a Starbucks, eventually we'll start buying something. That's coincidentally, it's going to happen. You spend, and all their policies within Starbucks are actually designed so that they can make Starbucks a third place. For example, they don't you can sit in the Starbucks as long as you want without a coffee, and no one will come to you and actually say, sorry, sir, you can't sit here. You got to buy a coffee. They've actually designed that policy so that you can spend as long as you want and make Starbucks the third place. They, it might not be something big in the UAE in certain parts over here, but Starbucks actually allows anyone to come and use the restroom. They allow anyone to plug in their laptop and use that for as long as you want. They never ask a question. You can actually nurture one cup of coffee for the entire day and you won't be asked any questions at Starbucks. Why? Because it's not about the commodity sell, it's not about the packaged good, it's not about the service, it's about becoming a part of your life, with them becoming the third place for you. And that's what they work towards when they come up and design everything, all their policy, it's working towards that. So let's take another quick example, rides and amusement parks, right? Individual rides, then you could have a basic carnival, right? Then you could have a theme park like Universal, and then you have something like Disneyland. Now, Disneyland, what is its mission? What are they trying to do? How are they trying to become a part of our life? Well, they basically craft their experiences to bring a smile to your kid's face. Now, that might sound really, really, mundane, and we all knew that, but think about a Disney experience from a kid's point of view, and Disney saying that they want to bring a smile to your kid's face. Everything that they do, all their processes, they actually think about bringing a smile to your kid's face when they're designing the ride, when they are actually buying mesh, for example. They bought mesh once in which children's fingers could get stuck. And they knew that when children's fingers get stuck, the child is not going to be happy anymore. They're going to throw a tantrum or something. They'll be hurt. So they actually bought expensive mesh. They have a process for when you are in the line and you have to wait very long. They have a process for that because they know that if you have to wait too long in line, your kids are going to get grumpy, tired and grumpy. They've actually designed a process to make sure that you can find your car in the parking lot within minutes after at the end of the day. Well, they have huge parking lots, by the way, in some of their locations, and they know that you can actually lose your spot. You won't remember where it is. We have the technology now, but they, even 10, 15, 20 years ago, designed a process so that when you come at the end of the day, within 2 or 3 minutes, they could tell you which section of the parking lot your car would be parked, because they knew that if that experience gets too lengthy and drawn out at that time, your kid is not going to be smiling anymore. Everything that they do, they try to keep that mission in front of them when they're designing their internal processes. But remember, they're starting with the customer. They want to make sure that Disney can bring a smile to your kid's face, and then they design everything backwards, working from there. Another great example, which we all are aware of, but let's take a look at it. It's actually personal computer. It was actually the personal computer industry. Now it doesn't even feel like that anymore. So you could have someone selling an individual good, someone having a basic store, maybe a theme store selling computer and peripherals, and then you have Apple, which is literally the store is a community and lifestyle space. And I'll explain why. Apple Store, by the way, when they designed their Apple stores originally, they didn't design them to sell the product. As funny as that sounds, when Apple originally designed these stores of theirs, they decided that they were going to craft the store to create Apple lovers. The consequence of that, and to create, it's like when you walk into an Apple store, it's basically like an adult Disneyland for a tech geek, right? They have all these rides and different things for someone. And the whole idea is that they want to make these people who are fanatics about their tech Apple lovers. They didn't bother about holding down the computers and tying them down. They gave the space over here. You can spend as long as you want, right? They actually have exhibitions and webinars and ongoing, and they even have, for example, the sales guy or the person who's the tech geek over there, he'll actually deliberately scratch his beard, right, or his chin to make it sound like he's really thinking deeply about your tech question. Everything in the store, not one thing, but everything collectively is designed and crafted to make sure that you become an Apple lover. And the consequence is that they have the highest retail sales per store, right? The store wasn't designed with that intent. If it was actually designed with that intent, it would actually, you won't see this much space in the Apple store. And by the way, a lot of people, a lot of other people, a lot of franchises have tried to copy this design, right? So they copy the store and the space and everything, but they don't get all the individual touches. They don't get all this little design intricacy, which becomes part of the experience that Apple is delivering in that store. So let me emphasize this again. They didn't design the store to sell. The selling was a consequence. They designed the store to actually craft the experience in the store to create Apple lovers. And by virtue of creating these Apple lovers, who, by the way, have such sacrificial loyalty for Apple that whenever Apple comes up with a new version and it has bugs, these Apple lovers don't care, right? They know that Apple will actually take care of that and move on. It's really interesting. I actually heard someone who talked both at Microsoft. In fact, it's Simon Sinek. I don't know if any of you have seen or heard or read some of Simon Sinek's work. He's the why guy, right? Who says every organization should have a reason. He was talking. I heard one of his talks, and he was saying that he had spent time. He had done a talk in Microsoft, and he did a talk in Apple, right? And what he noticed was that 70% of the presentations in Microsoft, right, were actually focused on how they were going to compete with Apple and with other tech producers. So all the presentations were focused on competition, right? The internal management presentations. On the Apple side, 100%, he said 100% of the presentations that were given by different Apple management folks during the course of the day in that conference, 100% of them were focused on how to improve and affect the life of their target customer. It was not about competing with Microsoft or, what is IBM doing, what is Huawei doing, what is Samsung doing. It was about how could they improve the life of their target customers. So these organizations who are obsessed about their customers actually spend time thinking about how they can improve their customers' lives rather than spending time thinking about how they can compete. They're always competing against themselves, in other words, and trying to further and further figure out what their target customers want. So there are a lot of these examples, a lot of these organizations. Lululemon over here is in the UAE. American Girl, I think, is also over here. I think even Lush is over here. And these guys, Lululemon, for example, they take their yoga classes really seriously. They're trying to develop a community. They've built their experience for someone who wants to go out and do yoga, right? They don't care about the clothes and everything, all their product that will sell. That's going to be a coincidental thing which will sell. But they know if they're able to build this community of die-hard people who want to come and do yoga, the product sell will happen. They're becoming relevant in your life by making sure that they help you fulfill your goal. Your goal is not to buy those products. Your goal is actually to do the yoga, right? So Lululemon takes that yoga really, really seriously, and the sales of their products happen then coincidentally. American Girl, they throw parties, they throw doll parties. They know that your girl who plays with her doll and throws parties and plays with them and brushes their hair and does everything wants to go to these doll parties. That's what they throw. They throw these parties. The our girls go and they'll join in those parties, and the sales of the dolls will be coincidental to that. The reason why the girl wants the doll is not for the doll's sake necessarily, but it's because she wants to throw a party for those dolls and with those dolls. So in all of these examples, what we'll see is that the businesses are actually earning the right to participate in their target customers' journeys, right? And remember this statement. That's what they're doing. They're becoming relevant to their customers, to their customers' lives, to what goals, objectives, and needs that their customers are trying to achieve in their life. At this point, I'd just like to quickly ask you guys if anyone wants to share an experience of which brand they repeatedly go to and which brand they advocate, right? Which brand do you go to repeatedly and advocate? And just take a moment to think about one. And if you can think of one, also take a moment to think about why you repeatedly go to that brand and why you advocate them, and share that with us if you can. So I'm just going to give you guys a moment to introspect on this question. And then anyone can unmute and share their experience with us. All right. Don't necessarily, it's great that Apple, I'd like to know why, but anyone else as well? Maha, by the way, you're right. That is Starbucks' mission, but they also have this mission to actually make Starbucks a third place. And that ties in with treating people like family, right? And giving it their all so they will become loyal. It actually ties in with that same concept. But thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing
Yeah,
that, Maha.
I Googled it. Since I'm on the mic, I will tell
That's
you.
cool.
I don't know it off by heart, obviously.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
But
Thanks.
I was gonna say about the brand. I would say there is a brand because in Dubai there are lots of hair salons, and a lot of them are absolute garbage and charge a lot and so forth. So I found that there is a brand. It's called the Loft. And
Okay.
the reason I find repeatedly I end up going there is not because just the price is, reasonable, but because of the experience, as you mentioned, and the flexibility factor, and you feel like you are, when you go in, you feel like you are at home somehow,
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that's, for me, that's why I keep going back again and again, because I like the fact that they're flexible and they're not like, I'm sorry, but this is the price and that's it. And, that's, take it or leave it. And so the whole experience is very important when you go to a place like that, because you're going to be spending money and spending a few hours there, So you want to make sure that you're guaranteed a pleasant experience and not coming out feeling like, God, I've just wasted time and oh, what a horrible, person.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. Some of the words that you've used, I want you to think about them when we go to a couple of subsequent slides and we actually talk about how we define customer experience. You kind of said somehow they make it feel like it's home, right? And that somehow is really, really important and significant. So I'm going to come back to ask you, maybe you'll be able to dig in a little deeper as we progress in this, to that somehow, concentrate a little on that somehow. But thanks for sharing that. The Loft, we'll come back to that in a while. Anyone else wants to share? But Maha, by the way, thank you. I'm actually going to follow up on the Loft and actually see whether they kind of fit into this crazy customer obsession experience that they're trying to deliver, and might reach out to them. So thanks for that. Because a lot of the time people say, okay, what are some local examples? So I'll definitely dig into that one. Anyone else want to share any brand? Which brand do they repeatedly? Cake View, I think you've talked about Apple. So yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely, we can.
Yeah, I am asking. I think I would like to bring the example for Emirates Airline.
Okay.
I think that they did and they are doing a good work on customer experience journey and understanding the customer. And even with the work with the stakeholders like Dubai Airport, just like, and you can understand, just they always, somehow try to exceed your expectations.
Okay.
Yes, and that's one of my examples. Just like, I always think that they really work hard on the whole experience.
Can you think of an example, maybe in your own personal experience, where they exceeded that expectation, and just share that with us?
Yes, when I had experience of just like flying to Vancouver via Heathrow. and
Okay.
I missed my flight in Heathrow. The flight from Heathrow to Vancouver when I was going from Dubai, and the whole they totally understood that how anxious and stressed I am. And
Okay.
first of all, they really tried to help me to just like overcome my stress, and assure me that I'm going to get the flight, nothing is going to happen, I'm not going to be charged or anything, and I just need to relax. And they give me a token to go to the lounge and spend some time there, and until they gave me and I was on economy trip, not the business was first. uh,
Okay.
yes, and then they arranged my next for the next flight to travel to Vancouver. and
Brilliant.
and it was not even their fault,
Mm,
it
mm.
kind of was because just like but again, I could have just like be uh, more well planned, and just like maybe get the flight that it was give me more time for this kind of delay. But anyway, that was a real great experience for me, and
Mm-hmm.
they really focused on me, my feeling, and how
Yes.
like, and that was something very, very interesting for me.
Yes. Yeah. So I think I can hear some of the words that you're using over there. Like, they address your feeling. So I think with that, let me go into a little bit of a definition of how I go about, or we at Epic go about looking at customer experience. Okay, sorry. Before that, I think, obviously we all appreciate this, that we are now in the era of these digitally empowered customers. And we can all kind of appreciate that this customer experience is going to become even more and more important. Looking at that entire experience, these empowered customers have instant access to information, right? They can check, they don't need to now wait a long time before they can actually get information on a product. They can check and compare products anytime they want to, right? Literally, they can express themselves anytime. All this advocacy and reviews and peer reviews that we're seeing, people making their complaints of good stuff, and their experiences of, sorry, complaints of bad experiences, and the experiences of good stuff that has happened, they can make them go viral in an instant. These things travel super fast. They feel more and more entitled, right? I mean, that's as I don't know how to describe this one, but I do see it around us. I do see it in myself at times. I see it in my children. I see it in colleagues and peers. People starting to feel more entitled, that they should, something should be just given. It should just be a given for them. So in other words, expectations are constantly on the rise nowadays. And it's not just expectations from your brand. It's because we have this dearth of information and exposure around us on all these other brands that we're seeing, especially in the digital space. And the expectation, the kind of delivery that Amazon does, develops our expectation for even when we go to a restaurant, or when we go to the loft, or when we deal with Emirates. It's the same expectation that we have from Amazon, kind of, that we bring to in our experiences and in our expectation set to all of these other, maybe even hard brick and mortar stores, right? It's the same expectation that we bring there. Expectations are getting higher and higher. We feel more entitled, and we want meaning in life, by the way. I mean, a lot of us, there's we're going through a very challenging time right now, and it's probably going to get more and more challenging. I think a lot of people feel disoriented at times. A lot of the new generation, they want more meaning. When you talk to the millennials, when you used to talk to the millennials rather, the first thing that they would talk about when wanting a new job, or what they wanted in a new job, salary was of course like a kind of a given, right? But it was really that they want to have purpose. They wanted to be part of an organization which was actually doing something authentic in the world. It created purpose in their life. All of these things resonate with what we just talked about in all of these organizations. One of them was actually throwing a party in the sense of making sure that it brings a smile to your kid's face. Another one was making sure that you can live your dream of being a tech geek, a tech lover, right? Apple. Another one was trying to make sure that you get your yoga, what you want to do in your life. They're bringing meaning into these organizations, into customers' lives. And this digitally empowered customer has given rise to the age of the customer, which is on the right side of your screen over here, right? Historically, most organizations, what they would do, they would force the customer, they would get their engineers, they would design their product, and then they would go out and market, and they would get the customers to try and come to their product. Well, now, with this digitally empowered customer, right, businesses are forced, as in all those examples we've seen, as in maybe, I will definitely explore the loft, as in these examples, they're trying to become a part of your life, a part of your journey. They will relate to what's happened with you, as in, just the way Asra has described, that she felt anxious and stressed. Emirates tried to become part of her problem and solve it. They didn't look at things from their point of view. They could have easily done that. That's exactly what Asra said. They could have easily done that, right? The problem was with Asra, what she had done, but they understood what kind of impact that was having on her in terms of her feeling. And we'll talk about that a little more in a couple of slides. But the key thing over here, historically, even most of us who've done our MBAs historically, we used to kind of be in the age of the business process and functions, where organizations would develop the product and market it. And with some, engineers who've come together and made the best product on earth, and they market it and expecting customers to come to their product. Well, now things are changing. I want to actually, it's really amazing. A lot of people, we think about Steve Jobs and Apple as a tech company. Listen to what this guy has said 25 years ago. I think this video is from sometimes in the late 1980s, 1990s. Just listen to what this guy has to say of his approach to business. And he actually admits, by the way, that he had historically been making a mistake. I'm going to ask you guys what mistake, by the way. So take a look at what he had to say.
Yes.
Mr. Jobs, you're a bright and influential man.
Here it comes.
It's sad and clear that on several counts you've discussed, you don't know what you're talking about. I would like, for example, for you to express in clear terms how, say, Java, in any of its incarnations, addresses the ideas embodied in OpenDoc. And when you're finished with that, perhaps you could tell us what you personally have been doing for the last 7 years.
You can please some of the people some of the time, but one of the hardest things when you're trying to affect change is that people like this gentleman are right in some areas. I'm sure that there are some things OpenDoc does, probably even more that I'm not familiar with, that nothing else out there does. And I'm sure that you can make some demos, maybe a small commercial app that demonstrates those things. The hardest thing is, how does that fit in to a cohesive, larger vision that's going to allow you to sell $8 billion, $10 billion of product a year? And one of the things I've always found is that you've got to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology. You can't start with the technology and try to figure out where you're going to try to sell it. And I've made this mistake probably more than anybody else in this room. And I've got the scar tissue to prove it. And I know that it's the case. And as we have tried to come up with a strategy and a vision for Apple, it started with what incredible benefits can we give to the customer? Where can we take the customer? Not starting with, let's sit down with the engineers and figure out what awesome technology we have, and then how are we going to market that. And I think that's the right path to take.
Right. So I've been using that quote from him in a lot of my past presentations, you know, that you got to start with the customer experience and then work backwards to the technology. And recently I actually found this video because I was trying to find the source of that quote. So any thoughts on this video?
I think we don't need any explanation. You know, what happened to Apple now, you know, shows that, you know, the strategy was absolutely correct.
Yeah, and you know, once again, Asra, the thing which really gets to me is that a lot of people think about Apple as a tech company. I mean, he's saying it himself. Fine, the technology is there, but how can I make it a part of something larger, a part of my customers' lives? Is to actually think about what experience they want and then work back towards everything, including the technology, including the way that store is actually designed, right? So it kind of fits in perfectly in all of that. And the rest
And
is history. Sorry?
one more thing that just, I do believe that for the companies that, you know, actually use this approach for their strategy, actually help the company. When you position yourself like this, helps you to be very scalable. You know, tomorrow Apple can do something absolutely non-technologic, you know, and it doesn't oppose the whole strategy or the positioning of the company. Like Walt Disney, if tomorrow Walt Disney does something totally not entertaining, but again bring the smile to a kid's face,
Yes.
it's absolutely wonderful, you know. And I think, you know, that's a great approach.
That's such an insightful comment you made over there, Asra. I mean, it's basically, and it's really interesting. When we do journey mapping workshops, we actually spend a lot of time in trying to understand our what our clients are trying to solve in their customers' lives. There's this famous saying that people are not trying to buy a quarter-inch drill. I think it's Thomas Levitt who said that. They're not trying to buy a quarter-inch drill. They're trying to make a quarter-inch hole. And there can be 20,000 ways of making a quarter-inch hole. So that, and if you're scoping your business as bringing a smile to your kid's face, as you're suggesting, or making that quarter-inch hole, you can imagine that a drill company might actually be making hammers, might be making drills, they could be making so many things which just help someone make a quarter-inch hole. They could expand their business. So you know, I kind of agree. But a lot of the time, businesses start at one place in the product space. So let's actually get into a little bit of defining what customer experience is now. And you know, this customer experience always starts off with some kind of a job or a need or an awareness or a goal a customer has, right? It's not necessary that it's just about me wanting to open that bank account. That's irrelevant. I'm opening the bank account because I need to have money, my salary deposited in it, right? Or I'm going out to the restaurant, not because I want to go out and necessarily eat something. That might be the case, but maybe it's because I just want to go out and spend some relaxed family time, have a change of environment, right? Change of environment is my job in that scenario. And these customers, they go about fulfilling their jobs across all these different interactions, across all these different touch points. So the customer experience, the way we define it, is the customer's perception. And we're going to try and break down this definition a little bit more as we go forward. Customer's perception of the sum of all interactions a customer has as they go about fulfilling their goals and objectives, right? So if you think about that Apple store who's trying to cater to a tech geek, right? My goal is that I'm just a tech geek who loves technology. So I just want to understand, I want to be able to spend like 5 hours just trying to understand the latest technology. That's what that store has been designed to do. They won't kick you out. Starbucks is not going to kick you out. It's designed to make Starbucks the third place. You want a third place where you can go and feel relaxed in different kind of situations. That's what they've done, right? And there's the customer's perception of the sum of all interactions a customer has as they go about fulfilling their goals and objectives. So let's break this up a little bit. we're talking about, the first thing is saying it's the customer's perception. It's something which is inside the customer's head. The way the customer is going to see reality, we won't know exactly what it is because it's inside the customer's head. And they could perceive it in so many different ways. In fact, what matters over here is that it's not the business, what the business is delivering, but rather it is what the customer is perceiving. So I wanted to just show you guys a quick video over here of the difference between what the business is delivering, right? A great process in this example, as you'll see, and what the customer's perception is, right? This is a shorter one, so it shouldn't take us too long. Another really interesting one.
Enjoy your flight, Ben. Hello. Oh, I'm sorry. We're only boarding rows 9 and above right now. You'll have to wait.
Okay. Well, I'm in row 8.
Please step aside, sir.
It's just one row. Don't you think it's okay if I...
We'll call your row momentarily. Step aside, sir. Thank you for waiting. We'd like to continue boarding the aircraft now. We're now boarding all rows, please. All remaining rows. Hello. Enjoy your flight.
Okay, now, I mean, so obviously in that case, right now, it seems to be quite clear that the business has kind of, they've designed a certain process, right? And that lady, she was courteous. She wasn't rude, right? She was a customer service person at the front end who was being courteous, but she was probably following some kind of a proposition or a process which the business is delivering, right? But as far as the perception of the customer was, he's completely disgusted with the situation because there was clearly no one over there, right? She could have easily let him go with no issue at all. But she was kind of stuck on what the business is delivering and the business's value proposition and the business's policy and kaza, the business, right? 80% of CEOs believe they deliver superior value propositions. The same research, this is slightly old research, I have to confess, but I think it might not be off the mark too much even now. 80% of CEOs believe they deliver superior value propositions. Only 8% of customers actually agree. And this is what the delivery perception gap is about. So it's the customer's perception which is really going to matter over here. It's not what the business is delivering, it's what the customer is perceiving. And this perception, okay, let me first ask you this, by the way, something to do with perception over here as well. If you just focus at the entire screen over here, how many different color balls do you see? If some of you have already seen this, just play with me, work with me. But for those of you who haven't seen this illusion before, how many color balls do you actually see on the screen? All right, so I think there are some comments in the chat. Okay, interesting. Just focus on the overall screen. I think you guys aren't focusing on the overall screen. And maybe you've seen this before, but okay. In reality, there is just one, but because of this screen of perception of the real world, of the scenario, and of the context that customers have, you are seeing actually 3 colors over here, right? But in reality, you're right. It's actually just one. The point over here is that customers, their perception is not what you are delivering. You are delivering one color over here. But in the customer's perspective and mind, he has certain filters. He has a context. He's actually been dealing with Amazon all his life, and now he's dealing with this local company which just can't deliver. So his perception has a lens in front of it. He has a certain context, and he won't see that one color that you're delivering. He'll see it as different colors. every customer is going to see things and perceive things in a different way. And this perception, by the way, most important point probably in customer experience, other than the fact that it's across all interactions, this this perception is made up of two parts. There's the logical, rational part, right? And there is the emotional, subconscious part. The amazing thing is that a lot of businesses just focus on this logical, conscious part. What are the functional requirements? What kind of delivery time do you need, right? But those organizations which you always remember, right? Maha remembers Luft because it somehow makes her feel like she's at home. That somehow is because that those feelings are being evoked in Maha's subconscious. Subconscious is something that you cannot always describe. If I ask you a simple question, how would you like your ice cream? You're going to say, I want 2 scoops, this flavor, and this kind of a cone. You're not going to be able to describe that I want an ice cream which just makes my taste buds, go wild. That's not what you're going to say. That's in your subconscious maybe, right? But you're actually going to just say, okay, this flavor, 2 scoops. Businesses, normal businesses that are on the left side of that, which are working on their process, just fulfilling the functional requirements. Most businesses only focus on what customers only ask for directly, and the functional part of they address the functional part of their needs. The leading brands actually focus and work on what your subconscious or emotional needs are. And mind you, both those examples that were given by Maha, right, where she wasn't able to exactly, she said, somehow it makes me feel like at home. I can actually spend 3-4 hours over there. That's how that place makes her feel. It's not, she could get that same kind of haircut somewhere else or whatever she was going there for. She could do that in any other business, but it was the feeling which stuck with Maha. Similarly, in the example that Asra gave of Emirates is an interesting scenario, Asra. We can actually talk about it because Emirates is actually, their customer experience program is not developed as a business discipline to actually increase their profitability and revenue, but it's actually an investment because there's a whole problem. There's a whole question of what was first. Was the customer experience first for Emirates and hence they became a big brand? Or was it that they were subsidized and heavy capital expenses? They go back to the government for that possibly, and hence they invest in customer experience. So it's kind of the chicken and egg thing a little bit. But anyway, I don't want to go into that right now. The important thing is Asra felt like Emirates was addressing her anxiety and stress. Those are things. The flight is the same, the ticket is the same, the airport environment is the same. It's the emotional response that Emirates gave to Asra that made Asra remember that and talk about that experience. It wasn't the rational or functional parts of it. And by the way, we are getting now to a better and better understanding of what this emotional subconscious is, how it can actually, the interesting thing is that in the last 20 years, the field of behavioral economics and neuroscience is getting to the point where we're understanding how human beings make decisions. They make 95% of their decisions, in fact, are made by the subconscious. And we're getting better at understanding the patterns, the neurological patterns which result in those decisions. In other words, our better and better understanding of behavioral economics and neuroscience, of the subconscious of the mind, of where the decisions are actually being made, enables us, is predictable. That's why this book is actually called Predictably Irrational. If someone wants to read it, it's a very simple one on behavioral economics. Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow is a little more complex in reading, but really comprehensive. They are talking about actually understanding the patterns that are happening in our subconscious. And by patterns, it means it's something that can be converted into data and understood and predicted better, and hence used in business context and in commercial context as well. So our brain, our decisions are actually driven by our emotional brain, right? In fact, to the extent of being that 95% of our decisions are actually driven by our emotions. And then our brain kind of rationalizes them at the end. It justifies the whole thing at the end to top things. So, if you keep thinking about the examples which both Maha and Asra have given, they're about the emotional appeal. As we're defining in customer experience, it's about actually understanding this emotional subconscious part of the human mind. Some of us might still think that, these decisions really, how can you say that? But take a look at this simple example. I'm not going to get into a very complicated example over here. A rational mind, I'm trying to be able to read the time easily. I need a strap that doesn't go bad because of sweat. I need the cover of the watch to be heat resistant. If there were just these functional things, I'd go out and buy this watch. But if we can afford it, now remember, there's always a point of if we can afford it, right? Our emotional mind actually takes over. What motivates me? I need my friends to look at me for success, right? I want to be a beautiful piece of art. I want to have a beautiful piece of art on my wrist, for example. I need a watch that speaks to my financial success. These are the kind of emotional, deep thinking that a customer actually has. And you're able to get away with this. Businesses actually get away with this, right? Why? Because they understand and appreciate that value perception is actually built through evoking emotions and senses. And that's the heart of customer experience, is actually getting and understanding the subconscious part of the human mind. Last but not least, I just want to spend a little bit of time on the fact that it's all interactions, right? It's all interactions. It's not just the digital interactions. It's not just the customer service and front end interactions. It's all these interactions that are going to make up the customer experience. I'm not going to remember an organization just by one instance. It's going to be the everything that makes part of that love experience which Maha goes to. Everything, it includes everything. It probably includes the welcome. It of course includes the actual functional requirements she went there for, but it's also the environment. She can't kind of like put her finger on it exactly. It's because it's actually through her subconscious. That's why she's not able to exactly pinpoint why, right? But it's there. It's all those different touch points. Of course, in her case, she's kind of dive deep into the shop experience, which has multiple different factors to it, which affect that customer experience. We all, by the way, this is seminal research. This is research which is still going on. And these guys, and there's something really, some of you might say, fine, I'm a CX guy. I'm talking about clearly something that I'm passionate about. And I'm talking about, yes, CX leaders have a way better return than CX laggards. As you can see over here, they have thrice the value of CX laggards. But the really interesting thing, and this is robust research, by the way, it's across time. It's not just in 1 year. It's across, if you look at this time period on the vertical axis, this particular graph is across 11 years from 2007 to 2017. And I think they're going to be updating the research this year with 2018 data as well. But the important thing, okay, it's straightforward and it makes sense, right? If you actually are able to drive the emotions and subconscious, and you're taking care of all your interactions and you're giving a seamless experience, customers are going to love you. Customers are going to buy more from you. They're going to stick with you. They're going to remember you. They're going to talk about you. So this kind of return makes sense, right? The interesting thing that I'd like to bring your attention to over here is this time period of when this research was started. Does anyone see anything bizarre about the start point of this research? What was happening around 2007 and 8? Does anyone remember? (2007 and 8). What was going on at that time?
Global recession.
Absolutely. We were in that deep financial crisis. You all got it right. We are in a similar situation right now. We're probably in a way worse recessionary situation that we're facing now. Even at that time, organizations who were focused on the end-to-end customer experience, the way we have defined it, and I'll tell you why I'm saying the way we have defined it. Those guys were generating more value for their shareholders, right? Remember, everything is about shareholder value for their shareholders than the CX laggards, even during that recessionary time. So, in fact, now that we are in this situation, it is becoming even more critical that we cater to the customer experience, the subconscious. Customers are sensitized now, right? So not only is it a great time to actually build a deeper bond with them, but it's a great time to actually understand what their expectations are and make sure that we remain aligned with them. Expectation sets are changing rapidly nowadays. And it's really interesting, but that's the reason actually why Majid Al Futtaim has actually said, we're going to double down on customer experience and really invest in it even more, because it's even now is the time when it's even more important, right? So that's the interesting thing. And another thing I wanted to just quickly mention about this particular research, this firm, Watermark Consulting, when they did this research, they also tried to kind of figure out what are the characteristics of these CX leaders, right? What differentiates them from these laggards? I wanted to share a couple of things which they have clearly pointed out of what is different between the CX leaders and the CX laggards. First thing, the leaders, the green guys over here, they aim for more than customer satisfaction. So in other words, they're aiming for that complete satisfaction of customers. That's point number one. Number two, these leaders, right, they understand that great experiences are intentional, they're crafted, they're staged, there's a deliberate intent in that entire experience, and that those experiences are emotional. And now tie that with what Asra and Maha have said. Those experiences are, for CX leaders, experiences are emotional. They evoke emotions and they're intentional. It's not accidental. It's intentional work for these CX leaders. The other thing, they realize that these companies manage both the reality of what they're delivering and the perception, more importantly, the perception of the customer. So they constantly try to keep a tab of what is the customer perception. All things that you will see that we have been through right now, right? Last but not least, and really important as well, these CX leaders, they realize and recognize the link between great customer experience and employee experience. Because they know the classical chain, the supply chain, if the value profit chain, as it's called, if you don't keep your employees engaged and satisfied and on purpose and doing something meaningful in their life, they're not going to be able to deliver what you want to deliver to your customers, because they will start seeing hypocrisy, right? They start calling out the organization. You want us to do ABC for customers? Well, I mean, that ABC is not happening for us, right? So these leaders recognize the link between great employee experience and great customer experience. And that's why they are CX leaders. Last but not least, I just wanted to share a little bit about, where can you start? Where do you start? So this view is definitely not a starting point, right? This is probably Asra, no problem at all. Thank you for joining in. But so this slide is about typically large organizations, when they go about trying to build customer experience capabilities, they have to look across all these different areas or capabilities to build, right? Strategy, customer understanding, then they design the experiences, then there's measurement of those experiences, there's the governance of those experiences, culture. This, of course, gets really complicated, but this is for large organizations. They have to look at things holistically. The systems and the size of the organizations are large. How can we, right? Maybe in the startup phase, maybe maybe some of us are in tech startup. How do we start customer experience, building customer experience? The simple way, the easiest way, is just to start asking ourselves three simple questions. The first is, what experience do we intend to deliver? So, sometimes you're a really passionate startup, you have a brilliant idea, you have in your mind what you want to deliver, right? You have some intent, you have a value proposition. A lot of people start in this space, right? So, what experience do you intend to deliver? I'm starting with this circle, by the way, deliberately, because some of us might be in the startup phase. And true to our human nature, we want to give the world something a part of us, right? So what do we intend to deliver? But you always try to rationalize that with who are my target customers and what do they expect from us, right? So when you build your strategy initially as an organization, when you build your value proposition, you have an idea in your mind, which is like, maybe what we intend to deliver. And you try to rationalize that with what customers are trying to expect. When you study what customers are trying to expect, don't just focus on what they are asking for. Also try to understand what is in their subconscious. And by the way, the best way to understand what is in someone's subconscious is to engage them in deeper conversations. This subconscious part is not a survey response by any means. It's qualitative data. It's ethnography. It's observation of customers in their environment, in their challenge environment, observing them, looking at their body language. Maybe it's not only observing them, maybe having a longer conversation with them about the last experience that they went through. That is when you will start understanding what's happening, what are the questions, what are the concerns, the deep anxieties, needs inside the subconscious part of your customer's mind, right? This deep orange over here is the subconscious part. And of course, then you have what your target customers are actually getting. So right now I'm delivering this presentation. I'm not able to actually see what you are actually getting, but I ask you in between, right? I ask you questions. That engagement kind of tells me where you're at, what you're thinking, what's going through your mind. Are you with me? Are you not with me? Are you getting bored of your mind? Are you, conking off? I get that sense by asking you. If this were a real session, I would be observing you people in that delivery, right? And be able to adjust what I'm delivering. I'd see the gap. There's a certain expectation that you have coming into this course, into a physical course. I see what's happening with you. I see you guys kind of like droozing off, falling asleep. I'll make some kind of adjustment to make sure that I can reach that expectation, match that expectation of yours. So 3 simple questions. And you can do this, by the way, anytime, anywhere, with any kind of target customer, right? In fact, it can be even with an employee or with a vendor or with your partner. Just 3 simple questions. Start with, what does your target customer expect, right? Or if you're a brand new startup, impassioned about your product, what kind of experience do we intend to deliver? What do our target customers expect? And then make sure that you're monitoring almost on a real-time basis, right? Through observation. It doesn't have to be through sophisticated technology, although that sophisticated biotech sensor technology is coming up. But you can do it simply by observing people, what they're actually getting. Question 1, what experience do you intend to deliver? Question 2, what do your target customers expect? And question 3, what are they actually getting? 3 simple questions can get you started literally on your CX journey. And if you want to put this in a different context, you can actually map all of this in the form of a journey map. We believe that in the experience economy, if customers' experience are the next battleground, next competition, if that is the place where you can create sustainable competitive advantage, sustainable value, you've got to manage those experiences. You cannot manage something that you don't understand. And the best way to understand your customers' experiences is to actually map them out, right? Is to map out what experience they're going through. And when you do that mapping, by the way, you can always kind of divide your maps into one part, which is talking about what are customers actually getting. Yeah. What are they expecting? They're getting something. What were they expecting at that point? And you can even overlay it with what were you intending to give them, right? So you can always divide your journey maps into this kind of area. Maps are probably the most powerful way to build that alignment in organizations so that everyone knows what your customers are getting, what they're kind of expecting, and what do you intend to get. And when you do this, you're actually answering those 3 questions and putting the answers in a visually easily communicable way which can be used for alignment in your teams, right? So let's not forget that actually journey mapping is a CX best practice, right? Most professionals in the US, customer experience professionals, are actually mapping their customers' experiences, even in the digital context. And this, by the way, on the right side is actually Middle East research done by firms over here. So this is the first kind of CX research that I found done by Synergy Consulting, right? Based on real data from this region. 76% of global firms have customer experience teams, while 56% of Middle East firms, and by the way, when they're talking about firms over here, they are talking about larger firms beyond a certain size. Furthermore, journey mapping has become a table stake capability in customer experience teams with over 74% of CX teams across the world, whether it's globally or in the Middle East. 74% of CX teams in digital leader firms have this mapping capability. And this mapping becomes really important in a digital transformation, actually, because no matter what you say, even if you're designing an app to actually collect someone's clothes and have them dry cleaned, right? That app, that solution is part, if you look at it from the customer's perspective, it's part of a journey of theirs across different touch points. It's not just the digital touch point which your real customer is dealing with. He might be focusing more and more on digital right now, especially in this environment now, true, but their real life is not just purely digital. Do not lose sight of that. Any person who's going out on fulfilling something in their life is not just playing in the digital space. They're cutting across their journeys, their objectives, their experiences are cutting across different touch points. I think this is really interesting to talk about from a CX versus UX point of view. So CX is always the end-to-end, from a transactional point of view, it's always the end-to-end customer life cycle. And if you're a digital product, you might be actually looking at that life cycle. The awareness is even happening in the digital space. The consideration, evaluation, maybe is happening over there as well. Maybe all of these things are actually happening in the digital space, but these things are happening in the real life of someone. And as you dig down deeper, you'll get to the detailed micro UX level as well. So UX actually feeds into the overall helicopter view of what's happening with the customer's experience. I want you to remember this when you're talking about customer experience versus UX experience. It's not that one is essential and the other isn't. They both work together. In fact, I know organizations in the US now where the CX and UX team are under one umbrella, and the UX team actually attends journey mapping sessions once a quarter to get the full larger context of their customers' life and their journeys so that they can actually design better product. Last but not least, I'd like to say, yes, the future is here. Once again, we have all this digital advancement which is happening. But let's not forget, we're doing this all to serve human beings at the end of the day, who are our customers. So let's keep the humanity in all of this, right? Thank you very much. I really enjoyed this session, and especially the feedback and the engagement, Maha, Asra, and KQ, and everyone who's been hopping onto the chat. I'd like to open this for Q&As. If anyone has any questions, please, you can all unmute now and go ahead and ask your questions. We have 15 minutes. Yeah, we have 10, 12, 15 minutes for this. Okay, there is someone perhaps who's written in the chat. So any questions, please go right ahead. And how did you enjoy this, by the way?
Hi, Gulam.
Yes.
Janisha here.
Hi, Janisha.
Thank you for the presentation. One question is regarding any recommendation on tools, any specific tools that we can use for customer journey mapping. How do you do it in your professional life? and how long does it take to create a customer journey map in certain domains? So if you can share some ideas from your experience, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure, Janisha, not at all. So, Janisha, really, it actually depends on what you're trying to achieve. You can have really simple journey map. I've seen organizations actually work on Excel to make their journey maps. I've seen organizations work on kind of enterprise type solutions, something like Suite CX. So I'm going to write these names down over here for you. Suite CX, right, is an enterprise-wide journey mapping solution, right? And in Suite CX, you can actually get live click streams as well. You can integrate Suite CX with something like your survey tools. You know, if you're using some kind of a survey tool, you can Survey Monkey also actually can be integrated into it. So that's an enterprise kind of solution. It's expensive, and that's the tool you use over there. But at the end of the day, don't forget one thing. Journey mapping is about the qualitative understanding of your customers' journeys. So all the data can feed into it, but at the end of the day, there's going to be nothing like actually spending time with your target customers, right? To actually observe on how they are going through different experiences and transactions and journeys. And you need to do that as close as possible to the transaction or the journey that you're trying to understand, and with as many, normally, to be honest, normally between 7 to 10 customers who fall within the target space that you're trying to understand. 7 to 10 customers, talking to 7 to 10 customers to understand the experience will tell you a lot, and then you back it with the data that you might have. But anyway, coming back to the tools, one is Suite CX. And these are tools, by the way, to do journey mapping in. These are not clickstream, real time, trying to understand what path your customer is going on. These aren't tools. These aren't clickstream tools. Some people confuse between journey mapping, right, and clickstream kind of tools. So let me know if you have that confusion. So there's the enterprise version, which is Suite CX, and then you can use something we often, in fact, use. In fact, this particular journey map that I showed you over here, sorry, yeah, that one as well. But this one is actually made on a tool called Castellans. So 1 second, let me, to everyone. So, okay, thank you, Salia, for saying Suite CX there, because I think I wrote that note just to Astrolab. Castellans, right? Castellans is another tool, Janisha. So you can use this. Castellans is really simple. It helps you make these journey maps almost, you know, if you have the information. The data, by the way, the data and research is separate from the actual mapping. So if you have that data, you can actually use something like Castellans, which is a simple tool, almost like Excel version. It helps you also visualize the emotion curve of your customers. So you can use that. And a lot of people I know, we don't do that ourselves yet because we don't have the in-house design capability. But a lot of people, Janisha, actually design their own customer journey map. So they'll make it in something like Adobe Designer. They'll have an in-house designer, because that, at the end of the day, you're making this journey map for some kind of an internal purpose, for some kind of an objective. And for that objective, you might need to draw the attention of your target audience of the journey map to a particular part of the map. So when you actually custom design the journey map yourself, you can control where you want the the audience's eye to move to, which parts of the journey map to actually concentrate and focus on. So I'm sorry that there's no short answer there, Janisha. You're more than welcome to reach out, by the way, if you want further explanation. But in the
Sure.
meanwhile, right now, I hope I've answered some of your questions, though.
Yes, definitely, Gulam. And one just last question on the timeline that it takes to do this workshop or the mapping.
Yes. Okay, so here's the deal in that, Janisha. Basically, a journey mapping engagement or a workshop can be as short as a week, 10 days, a week, right? And it can be as long as 2-3 months. It depends on your level of comfort with the level of understanding your in-house team and employees have of the customer's experience. Because remember, journey mapping, at the end of the day, you're trying to get your customers' perception, your customers' actions, thoughts, feelings, right? So normally best practice is to do that research with customers so that you can actually validate your journey maps. But a lot of times you believe that your frontline workers in your organization have a really good understanding because they're interacting with the customers day in, day out, right? They have a really good understanding of what pains and gains your customers are actually going through. They've had a lot of conversations. They've heard all the crap from customers. And talking about your frontline employees, if you believe that your frontline employees have a really good understanding of your customers' journeys, then you can make it a shorter engagement to at least come up with your first version of the customer journey map with engaging all different functions of your within your organization, including frontliners. And if you believe that that journey map really does represent your customer's view, then fine, go ahead and base that as use that as your baseline and use that for some kind of decision making. But be careful when you use it for decision making. You really do want to know that that is your customer's thought perception. And the best way, once again, is to actually go to and observe the customers firsthand, hear it from the customer's mouth.
Perfect. Thank you, Gulam.
Yeah. But you're still welcome, by the way, Janisha, to reach out sometime if you want to discuss this further. So
Sure.
There's another question from Cakeview. Hi, Ghulam. How can you measure the return on investment for customer experience? Okay, this is a lengthy topic. But the first thing is probably you've got to have some kind of don't worry about what measure you're using, right? Whether you're using customer satisfaction, whether you're using net promoter score. The important thing is that you've got to get to know your customers one-on-one. So for example, if there's been a transaction and your some customer has given you a rating of 9, right? You've got to know who that customer is, right? Because remember, customer experience is not about a statistic. It's about a customer. That a customer could be representative of a lot of customers, but you're actually trying to understand the experience of individual customers. That's why we've really focused on qualitative research. So to come back to your question, once you're able to track who has given that 9 score, Cakeview, you then actually connect that with the actual value you're getting from your customer. So you've got to connect your NPS or satisfaction score or whatever measure you're using for your customer experience, right? You've got to connect that, all the 9s, who are giving you the 9s and 10s, who are giving you the 8, 9s, 7, the mid-level scores, who are your detractors, who are highly dissatisfied. You've got to connect them with the actual transactions that are happening, right? So who are these the customers who've given you really high ratings? You've got to know who these customers are. What are the operational metrics? How much have they bought from you? How frequently do they come from you? You've got to connect your customer experience data with your operational or revenue or financial data. And that's when over a period of time, once you have some data, then you'll be able to measure the ROI, because you'll simply be looking at if I'm able to deliver a higher customer experience, right, as opposed to a lower one, what is the impact, the financial impact? Do these higher guys who are giving me a higher rating actually buy more from me, visit me more frequently, come in, advocate more for me, right? As compared to those guys who are detractors. So you've got to get to that point. It's a little bit of work. It's not straightforward. It does require a little bit of conviction and work and commitment to do that. But once you do that, it becomes fairly straightforward. And then you keep building that engine. You keep growing that engine. And then you can get really sophisticated with it over time. So I hope I gave you some idea of that. Okay, you're welcome, how someone can gain skills to become an expert CX professional. Okay, so as far as these skills go, let me actually take you to that one slide, which is actually further down. where we're talking about these different capabilities, right? So you kind of have to decide, not decide, but you can kind of pick up on these capabilities that we're talking about. These capabilities are actually different areas, functional expertise, you could say as well. And sometimes the same person might have exposure in all these areas. There is a certification called Customer Experience Professional, CCXP, Certified Customer Experience Professional, right? What I had done. So that is probably, as far as I'm concerned, that is the first step that I took. The other thing, though, is to be more specific, is that you've got to kind of work in some area, whether it's working on customer data, whether it's working on voice of customer, doing surveys. Start in whatever of these areas you feel comfortable in, right? Uh, Perhaps visit the CXPA site. Let me actually write that down for you in the chat. 1 second. Not CakeView. I'm going to respond to everyone. It's CXPA, and the certification is CCXP. And they actually have forums over there. So you can go and actually look at all the different Q&As. You can put your own questions over there as well. And you'll get responses from all parts of the world on what someone's view on the particular question you have is. So you can start developing your expertise from first engaging with others, looking at those 6 areas, deciding which area you want to hone in on, and then work from there. Rajaswar, if you want, once again, you're welcome to reach out and we can have a side conversation on that at some point as well. You know, looking at the context of where you are right now and what you really want to do. Not at all, Maha. Thank you. In fact, I think our time is up. It is 4 o'clock. So I'd like to thank, you're most welcome, Rajaswar. I'd like to thank all of you for attending. I think, by the way, that Astrolabs is going to send out a feedback form at some time. Please do give us your feedback on this session, and we would look forward to connect with any of you. By the way, just last but not least, sharing our details, contact details in the chat. So if any of you want to connect with us, please feel free to do that. I'm just going to put this real quick over there, and then we'll call this a day. So thank you all. Let me just add these to the chat. So either myself or, of course, Sadia, you can reach out to any one of us on one of these 2 addresses. Thanks again for your time, and have a great one. And please feel free to reach out and connect if you have further questions, thoughts, whatever you want to discuss with us. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye. Astrolabs guys, who also thank you, by the way, for allowing us to participate in this. Bye for now. I'm stopping the share.